Louis Jean-Marie Daubenton died on New Year's Day, 1800. 17 years later, he was remembered in the name of a bat, described as a species new to science by Heinrich Kuhl, a 20-year-old German naturalist working in the Netherlands. Kuhl would die in Indonesia, 3 days shy of his 24th birthday, a death attributed to overwork, a life lived in a blaze of scientific description, the paperwork defining new species, the act of giving names, words to life, making them new. Without words, things remain inchoate, fleeting presences hard to grasp. Daubenton did not give us his bat. Kuhl did. It is placed in the Myotis genus, the mouse-eared bats. If pipistrelles are birds of the evening, the unknowability of bats extends even further. Even their ears, perhaps every bat's defining characteristic, aren't their own, but metaphors for more familiar mammals. There is still a glimmer of light in the sky. It is 20 minutes after sunset and I am walking to the River Nith. Big streaks of dark grey cloud against the silvery sky that's just clinging behind. There is a storm forecast for tomorrow. An August storm, 40-mile-an-hour winds, 100% chance of rain. A fine Scottish summer's day. So I am completing a bat survey by myself. This isn't right, you're thinking. Structurally, this project has led you to believe that I see the bats after I've spoken to someone. But sometimes I have to be that person. The forecast storm will likely cancel tomorrow's survey, so I have stepped in to do it a day earlier than planned. I live next to the site anyway. I walk it regularly. I know the species is there. In the 19th century, Shelley thought that poets were the unacknowledged legislators of the world. But in this prosaic century, we know that logistics and health and safety are what legislates for everything. But this is only because the magic of bats has translated to me, struck a chord deep inside me, legislating for the fact that the person surveying the surveyors has become the person doing the survey. I'm not sure if there's a greater sign of success for a conservation effort than that. The survey is the National Bat Monitoring Programme's Waterway Survey. The Daubenton's bat is the water bat. It is tied to water flanked with trees, whether rivers, canals, lochs, ponds, wherever the water is smooth and near trees for roosting and perching, the bat should be found. In Scotland, where the water is extensive and often calm and beside trees, Daubenton's bats are widespread and can be common. But their presence within that range, verified by surveys, is patchier. How the Waterway Survey works is that I take a kilometre of riverbank, and at 10 different points down that riverbank, I stop for 4 minutes and count the amount of Daubenton's bats that pass me by. And I'm going to begin this near the A75 bridge, so the static of the bat detector will briefly be overshadowed by the static of 60-mile-an-hour traffic. When my phone alarm, the bane of my mornings, goes off, it's time to move on. Despite the forthcoming storm, it is still evening here. No hint of what is to come. There are no movements in the willow leaves above me. The last of the jackdaws are flying off to their roosts, and there are midges and other flying insects buzzing around the streetlights. So it should be a good night for bats. The sky is darkening now. On average, it takes Daubenton's over an hour after sunset to emerge, but this survey requires seeing them. Water holds light late. You can see the bats skittering over the reflected sky longer than you would against the night sky. And when even the water fades to black, there is the beam of the torch, the squalling white noise of the detector to help. It is 9:50 p.m. now. Time to begin. This riverbank is familiar to me. I walk it weekly at least, if not more frequently in the long light evenings of summer. I have watched it go from the first flourishings of wild garlic in late winter to the cow parsley of spring. Now we are at summer's height and the vegetation has grown rank. Japanese knotweed proliferates between stands of Himalayan balsam. Yellow loosestrife and great willow herb flanks the banks. Bindweed stems snake their way around nettle and hogweed. It is a riot of dominating life, competing. Mostly good for insects, and so good for the things that eat insects, like trout and grayling in the river that share the same insect food as the Daubentons, caddis and mayflies that break free of the water, chironomid midges, things that feed fish and birds in the day are bat food at night. Beech and birch, oak and ash, alder and elder offer perches either side of the river. It is a scrappy edge of town. Not a wilderness, of course, but with its own wild, impenetrable energy. A fly-tipped tent and the burn mark from a campfire next to a wooden bench by the edge of a car park just makes sense here. I'll begin between the bridges, the old railway and the new A-road, stone and concrete. I dial down the detector to 35 kHz, set my phone alarm for 4 minutes' time. The detector's white noise blurs with the road, blurs with the murmurs of the river, which here runs shallow over the riffles, the least calm section of the River Nith above Nunham. Daubenton's like calm water. Insects are more frequent over ruffled water, but echolocation is confused by ripples, by the irregular movement of them. In the dwindling light, my detector buzzes only for a pipistrel it picks up, skimming the bank, not the water. A heron moves within the thick shadow of the far bank, an apparition night fishing. My phone alarm goes, an aggravatingly sweet, penetrating tinkle. 4 minutes up. No Daubentons. Under the A75 bridge, I don't see a fish jump, but hear it. See the rings spreading, reaching the foam swirling in the eddies, showing the disturbed flow of the river. It is deeper here. The water still disturbed, but not rippling like earlier. The first Daubentons shoots down the river here, a flicker over the pale foam, the detector in my hand suddenly resolving a dagger, 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 dagger out of the static. The next stop rings noctules out of the night, air kissing through the static, glimpses of black above the trees on the far bank. Pipistrels chatter, the lack of Daubentons beginning to worry me. Having been confident in my abilities, I'm now worried my detector is faulty, worried that the banks are too thick, the river too wide here, that my bat knowledge isn't good enough. And then a shingle beach opens up on the inside of a meander, just down from the confluence of the Clwden and the Nith. I line up with a gap in the trees opposite. The river, the deep blue of the almost dark, the only movement in its water, the little rings of insects dappling, and a small fish jumping. The Daubentons begins as a glimpse, a squeal on the detector and a black flicker low over the water. They fly in straighter lines than other bats, but with the same manic speed, streaking across the blue water and vanishing into the black. 5 shoot across in 4 minutes. I try again at the meander's end. One of the interesting things about bats is how suburban they can be. That's why I'm standing by the bank of the Nith, and in front of me is a semi-detached pebble-dash house, the kitchen light still on. Next to that is a floodlit industrial unit, and if I look to my left I can see another crossing of the A75 over the river next to a factory. And yet here in this highly unpromising location, bats. There are trees and calm river water, and there are insects. I can feel them flitting over my skin, and there are 6 Daubenton's bats passing over the river. It is too dark for me to see them now without torchlight, but the detector translates their presence for me, and that's staccato squalling. When you're out at night looking for bats, your senses become heightened. After dark, each sound becomes important. Even with the buzzing of the bat detector, its constant tinnitus-like crackle, other sounds, The sounds of vehicles, the sounds of jackdaws late to roost, the sound of owls distantly hooting becomes amplified. And you become keenly aware of touch. So I am keenly aware of large yellow underwing moths fluttering against my face, the touch of a midge, the brush of something bigger, the stroke of a plant you didn't see as they reach out across the path. Senses become heightened. You almost wish you were a bat and you could read the landscape at night properly, see how they do it, be able to master this sort of alien world, this shadow life that they do so well. For the next few stops, the vegetation has thickened. The detector still picks up a handful, and then the final stop. Under the pedestrian bridge, the streetlights mean there's no need for a talk. A tawny owl breaks free of the trees and flaps silently over the river, like a very big, very slow, very precise bat. I see the Daubentons as brown sparks flickering, somewhere between the river and the sky as they catch the wider sweep of light than the torch produces. The detector's staccato squalling has become the heavy rainfall of bat sound. They look almost like a swarm, like the way insects gather over the water. It is a relief and a release. A relief because I knew Daubentons were plentiful here. I had seen them before, but the earlier difficulties detecting them had me worried. All I need to do is count the bats passing, tune into the constant chatter of the detector. This stretch of river, on the edge of the biggest town in the Scottish Solway region, had not been surveyed before. Now it has. This is probably my biggest contribution to the project, putting these Daubentons on the record, a data point that helps steer them away from being inchoate, fleeting things. It helps make them real, graspable, known. When the weather improved again, I caught up with Liam to discuss the species and the survey. From what I've seen, that they are widespread in Scotland, but the actual records of them seem to be tied to, down here, the major rivers, a couple of major rivers in the borders, and then it's solidly across the central belt, and it tracks up the east coast, and you've got a cluster around Inverness.
Really?
And then sporadic around the Highlands.
Yeah.
Which I presume is observer bias.
Bias, yeah. I'm not entirely sure. One thing I think I did see, I've seen distribution maps as well. And another thing, factor, I think, is to do with elevation or altitude. And so I wonder if that, those sort of routes that you describe are tied to either river courses, or I think their distribution or their habitat use has likely been influenced by canalisation of water courses, and so there are probably canal routes and systems along which that have facilitated that distribution or spread. I think a major factor in their status would be tied to river health, aquaculture, and so certainly things like pollution would be a major factor, runoff from agricultural activity, anything that would negatively impact river health or the invertebrate assemblage on which they would forage. Really, I guess one of the things underpinning a project like Species on the Edge is communicating the importance of having a good baseline of data, and so a major output of this project in particular is about engaging with communities and equipping them with the skills and confidences to be able to participate more readily in these sorts of projects, such as the National Bat Monitoring Project, so that they can be contributing valuable data to help inform conservation action.